Welcome to Latinos Who Thrive. I am your host, Victor Escalante. Today, we're going to do a deep dive on the future of Latinos in Texas. We have returning guest and friend of the show, Jose Monterrosa. Jose is well qualified to speak about the subject as he is the founder of Imagina Communications, a boutique PR agency that is a specialist in the Latino market in the Houston area. So let's get on with it. And now we have Jose Monterrosa. Jose, welcome to Latinos Who Thrive.
Hey, I'm very glad to be here, Victor. This is an exciting time and challenging time as well for Latinos, and we have some data to share about.
Yeah, the last time you were on, we were riding high on what the country was headed. And in my experience, I think it's always a good time for Latinos. It's always good
Yes.
to be Latino, to be resilient, to be innovative, and that's what the show today is about. Is bringing out the best in Latinos, the resilience and the special traits that make us who we are. Jose, you recently attended the American Marketing Association and they presented some interesting data. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about that?
Sure. So this was a luncheon organized by the American Marketing Association, the Houston chapter, and they had the owner of this agency in California. The name of the agency is Census. They do a lot of they do a lot of research regarding the Latino Hispanic market, and they brought this very interesting presentation about Hispanics in Texas. They call it the new Tejano, but I think that we understand Tejano in a different way here. The point that they were trying to make is how the Latino demographics are changing in Texas, and I'm pretty sure you and I are going to have a good conversation about that, Victor.
I'm sure. Let me stop you there because the word Tejano, I'm actually a subject matter expert on what Tejano is because I was commissioned by an agency to do a study on the Tejano voting block. Okay.
There you go. Okay.
So I had to do a really deep dive on what is associated with the word Tejano. And so, yes, for a California agency to be using the word loosely Tejano, we're off to a bad start. But go ahead. Go ahead.
Start with by knowing how many Hispanics are in Texas and how that has changed over the years. This may be information that is not necessarily new to a lot of specialists or professionals in this area, but for the others that are not necessarily familiar with Latinos, this may be revealing. So can you see the first slide?
Yes, I
Victor?
can.
Yeah. Okay. So we have three bars there. The first one, the smallest one is 2010. The second one is 2020, and the third one is 2024. So you can see how Latinos went in 2010 from 9.5 million to 12.4 in 2024. That's a significant increase of maybe 32% growth over those years. And Texas, Texas is a big state, and we have a lot of Latinos here. But that doesn't mean that we have grown. We are the state that has grown the fastest. There are other states in the U.S. that have experienced a faster growth of Latinos, like, for example, the Dakotas. They have experienced a significant increase of Latinos, but population-wise, it's still a small population in those states. So relevant information, and especially for the second slide that I want to show here, and this is where it starts to get interesting. For those that are not familiar with Texas, these are the four cities with the most Hispanic population in the state. And out of those four, we have two that are pretty much the dominant cities, right? Dallas and Houston. Houston from 2010 to 2024 has increased about 44% in terms of Latino population. But the interesting thing here is Austin. Austin has grown the fastest and the most, 52% in those years. And interesting enough, people ask when I was at the conference, why is that? A lot of this is basically attributed to the tech industry and the fact that a lot of companies have moved to that city. At least for the last 10 years, there has been a significant move or transfer of companies from California to Austin. Just to give you an idea, and I got the numbers here to back it up, but in 2022, I believe the number of tech companies that moved to Austin was about 900 companies. Just
That's a lot.
that's a
That
lot.
that's very significant. Yes.
Exactly, exactly.
So so
So
to backtrack, Jose, what you're telling us, your guys and your mates and your construction workers, we're actually talking about STEM jobs in that Latinos are moving to Austin with these big corporations, that professional Latinos that are working in the STEM areas that really represent a significant amount of purchasing power in the state. So
y-
why don't you go ahead and do a deep dive on what all this means?
yeah, so the idea is that yes, the fact that those companies have moved to California and maybe others coming from other states means that some of the workforce associated with that industry has gone to some Latinos, right? But the thing is that when you get a massive amount of companies moving to a city such as Austin with that significant number of employees, you need more homes and you need more office space. And I think that is where the secret sauce is here. The increasing population of professionals in the tech industry has, uh, I guess, trigger a demand for more homes and more buildings where they can allocate their offices. And as you know, a lot of Latinos, especially in the low income bracket, are very much associated with construction. So that to me means okay, I can see and I can kind of understand why that increase of the Hispanic population in that city. So that's the way that I'm understanding this. But obviously, other people may have different opinions about why the growth of Latinos in Austin. Now, the thing about Houston and Dallas is that, and many people know this, that both cities are usually considered to be like gate cities for Latinos, right? Meaning they come here, they either decide to stay in Houston or they move somewhere else in the US or in Texas, right? And I'm saying this because in the next slide, we are going to see something that you and I are kind of familiar with, levels of acculturation. Okay. So, as you can see on the slide and with the bars, Houston and Dallas are the cities that have basically the most number of, let's put it in one bucket, unacculturated Latinos. All right. So the red, the the charcoal, and the green, those are the ones that are basically more associated with Spanish, right? Uh, the ones in the orange and the light gray, those are the more acculturated Latinos. So, for example, someone like me, I feel like I'm more in the green area of those bars. You, Victor, because you too different from me. I think that you are more in the orange. Maybe one leg in the orange and the other leg in the green, right? Yeah, how you feel about that?
My friends accuse me of being a coconut. Br- Brown on the outside, very white on the inside. And that's because, Jose, I saw early on, again, at age 10, I didn't know a word of English, but I just I just made it my my life's passion to acculturate as quickly, assimilate and acculturate first, and then completely assimilate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much so Hispanicness that I had to relearn it. I had to relearn it. Yes, because I ended up teaching in Ciudad Juarez and the University of Guadalajara. So again, there's a lot of us out there that again we just happen to be totally immersed in the culture and the language, and we ran with it. But there is a downside if you don't balance that out.
Okay.
This is very interesting what
Yeah.
you're sharing with us.
And what you're seeing on the ends of this graph is Austin and San Antonio, right? And as we all know, San Antonio is and maybe this is where we can talk about Tejanos, right? San Antonio seems to be more Tejano, and so is Austin. And this has implications for marketers and communicators, right? I usually get the question, well, I mean, we need to target Latinos, we need to target Hispanics, we need to go into Spanish radio stations, Spanish TV, and we are going into Texas, right? But Texas is a big state, and Latinos here or Hispanics in Houston may not necessarily be like the ones in San Antonio. And I think this graph by itself is showing us that. Now, this usually becomes a budget problem for a lot of companies that may not have the necessary means to customize their message to Hispanics in Texas, right? So they think that whatever they can do in Houston, they can do it in San Antonio. That really depends on which segment of the Latino market you are targeting in those cities. But you have experience with the Tejanos in South Texas. Are we talking about the same Hispanic in the South? And
We are not. Okay, and let me tell you where I'm coming from. I grew up in the San Antonio area. I lived in Laredo, Texas. I lived in El Paso, Texas. I went to school in Austin, and I used to travel extensively to Dallas Fort Worth area for business, as
Mhm.
well as the Rio Grande Valley. Okay,
Okay.
so I have a very broad experience with the different nuances of Latinos throughout the state, and it's almost like we have a different countries to segment the Latinos into kind of are totally different from the Latinos of Houston. And again, the study that I was the chief engineer for this study showed that they use a different language, and even the same words, Jose, do not have the same meaning of someone in Houston versus the Rio Grande Valley. Okay.
You mean worse in Spanish or English?
Yes, in Spanish.
Okay.
So a carne asada to someone in Houston is just family getting together and for a weekend. But a carne asada in the Rio Grande Valley, you're talking about a big pachanga that it's like a big thing because again, that's what the culture down there lives for is the trucks, the beer, the guns on the gun racks
Mm.
of trucks, because a lot of these workers are oil workers, and they don't necessarily consider themselves Mexican American. Again, they consider themselves Tejanos, and Tejanos is like it's almost like a different country because the Tejanos is associated with the original Mexicans that lived down in the Rio Grande Valley before Texas became part of the Union. So
So if it,
very deep roots to the original Mexicans that live down there. And again, they consider themselves white. They don't consider themselves Mexican American. They consider themselves white.
So if you bring a guy, a marker from Mexico City, and you put him in South Texas, in one of those, border towns, uh, there's some learning to do, right? I mean, he
There's a lot of learning because I've also traveled to Mexico City on business. And again, it's a totally different culture. It's like it's more low key, more communal, which means that it's more social interacting and doing business. So when you bring someone to say McAllen or Brownsville, they're gonna go through somewhat of a cultural shock because you don't do business the same way that you do in Mexico City, where it's more of an urban type of Mexican that they have a very strong accent. In fact, there's a lot of prejudice for they call them Chilangos. They call them Chilangos, the, people from Mexico City.
right.
You can tell a Chilango by the accent that accepted, in the Rio Grande Valley, unless, again, you have a lot of money. You're throwing a lot of money and a lot of status, then that's a totally different,
That's a
ballgame.
different ball game, right? Yeah. So something that is designed for Houston may not necessarily work in South Texas.
Guaranteed, guaranteed, and that was the flaw, Jose, that, a lot of the California political think tanks thought in messaging for the first election of Trump, and probably they totally blew it in the second election of Trump because almost by accident and by osmosis, they kind of figured it out the first go around that the messaging to Latinos that you would message in California was totally ineffective in messaging to Latinos in the Rio Grande Valley.
Yeah. That's what happened when you're making decisions in another state, right? And even in a city such as Houston, because people think that, okay, Houston, no, but Houston can be can be a country itself. I mean,
Yes,
Texas can be three or four states.
totally.
But Houston, it's massive. So
Yeah.
even here, we have differences in terms of which Latino community you want to approach. There's no secret, the difference between the Cubans, the Venezuelans, the even the Chicanos. I mean, I'm using the word Chicano. I know that some people may not like that, but it's widely accepted in some communities here. Even them, may not be associated they're not associated with the way you're engaging or communicating someone that is probably from Cuba. I mean, significant
Sure.
differences. But my point is that when you have a company that is coming to Texas and they talk about, doing or launching this campaign in the Houston area to Hispanics, usually the question is which segment of Hispanics because we have a lot here, and there are significant differences between them. But that's obviously usually a learning process, right, for many companies. But let me go ahead and jump to the next slide that basically talks about the labor force associated with Latinos, right? In the slide says Hispanics make up a substantial a portion of the Texas labor force. They comprise over 40% of the state's workforce, with significant representation in industries such as construction, agriculture, hospitality, healthcare, and energy. Again, uh, many Latinos working in construction. As a matter of fact, one of the next slides kind of outlines the priorities, the industries in which they are allocated. But construction, agriculture rely heavily on Hispanic labor, especially for skilled and unskilled positions that are critical for the state's growth. So this slide right here, which basically talk about the business side of Latinos, right? Hispanic-owned businesses are among the fastest growing segment in Texas. The state is home to over 800,000 Hispanic-owned businesses. That's a lot.
You're listening to Latinos Who Thrive with special guest Jose Monterrosa. We'll be right back.
Ready to transform your mindset, career, and life? Join Victor Escalante, a certified neurolinguistic programming trainer with over 30 years of experience for the 2025 NLP certification training starting January 26th. Listen to what one former student had to say. This training was a game changer. Victor's expertise helped me break through mental blocks and elevate my career to become the chief operating officer of my company. Whether you're a coach, entrepreneur, or leader, this transformational program will give you the tools to master influence, enhance performance, and create lasting change. Seats are limited. Call 713-992-8279 or reserve your spot now by emailing victor@victorescalante.com. You will be glad you did for the rest of your life.
We now return you to Latinos Who Thrive with special guest Jose Monterrosa. That is huge, Jose.
That is huge.
That is huge, and this is very interesting data. How old is this data?
2022.
Wow, that is mind blowing, Jose. Which tells us that again, Latinos play, for lack of a better word, they hold the reins of the future economic prosperity of Texas based upon these numbers. Because again, if you focus on helping those 800,000 Hispanic owned businesses grow, if you create policy to help those companies grow, you're talking about the backbone of Texas.
Right now it's 30% of business owners in the state. But I completely understand what you're saying about, being the backbone, because if we look ourselves in the future, I guess the challenge for Hispanics in Texas, to me, continues to be gaining political and more wealth power in the
Yes.
states, right?
I want to get your take, Jose, on the politics of gaining greater inclusion into the political landscape. I want to get your take. Why do you consider that important? Because I have my own opinions.
Wealth policy, you know? I mean, how can we expect someone, and right now we're seeing that, and I'm not going to get into the decisions that are being taken in DC, right? But you can see a huge disconnect between some new direction that we're taking with things that are happening in communities in Texas. And I'm going to speak, for example, just Houston, right? The implications of the decisions being made in DC, in a city such as Houston, it almost feels like somebody is putting the food on your head and is not allowing you to grow and continue to prosper, because you are being somebody's putting the brakes, right? And whenever we have a significant amount of Hispanic population in cities such as Houston, and we are basically freezing the funding that is allowing those individuals that do not have the opportunity to grow, that becomes a problem. And that's where I see that if we don't gain political power and wealth, as opposed to one thing is owning a significant amount of businesses in Texas, but another thing is for me to scale up into those wealth layers that may not necessarily have a representation of Latinos. And therefore, decisions that are being made at that level have implications on the rest of the Latino population in Texas. That's my take on it. But what is yours?
Yeah, so I totally concur with you, and here's where I go with my analysis. I have been to some of the meetings, Jose, put on by the city, where they are begging and asking minority-owned businesses to be certified because there are billions of dollars that have been allocated for big construction projects right here in the Houston area. I'm talking about billions of dollars. And a lot of those businesses need to be on track to apply for subcontracting opportunities because the way the law has been is a certain percentage of that has to be allocated to minority owned businesses.
Right. Right.
Now, whether that continues to be the case or not, only time will tell. But what that means is there's tremendous opportunity for small construction companies to be minority certified, to be women owned certified, because you go straight to the front of the line after meeting certain qualifications for you to gain some of those contracting opportunities to grow your business of going from a family owned strictly family members working in the construction company to being a mid-sized company that is now has billings in the millions of dollars.
Right.
And now you've grown to a staff of 30 people because again, unless you have the personnel and unless you have the technology and unless you have everything else. So again, we're talking about a small business being able to generate other jobs and to contribute to the local economy as opposed to having to bring in outside contractors to fulfill all these requirements because there's not enough qualified small business owners in the Houston area to be able to meet these federal standards.
Right. And it may be the case that the demand is so big that we may just not have enough. Right.
We don't.
Uh,
We don't.
yeah.
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 And again, Latinos are not at the negotiation table if they're not involved in politics.
Right.
You need to be involved in politics to be able to have your say so and to be able to lobby for your own interest and your own community interest and your own ethnic interest in order to have your share of the pie. You need to be at the table.
You need to be at the table, and obviously, you also have to open that door, right? If that is the true spirit of an organization or an entity, you have the effort to open that door to those businesses. So, but anyway, this is what it looks like in terms of Latino businesses in Texas, and as you can see on the last bullet points of that slide, uh, construction, accommodation, and food services, which is basically restaurants and hotels, right?
Sure.
And then professional, scientific, and technical services. Professional being attorneys, for example. Technical services, maybe HVAC services. Those are the top three, pretty much, based on this study, and that's where the core of the Latino companies is located as of now. It may change in the future. It may not. We are really dependent on what's going to happen in DC. But the next slide is related to the spending power of Latinos, and we have heard this from the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce many times, right? But the spending power of Latinos in Texas is $400 billion. Texas Latino economy is the second largest in the U.S. So many Latinos out there with money in their pockets. I, I I think again that a lot of this is related to the volume, the size of the population, and the fact that they are spending their money in various industries. Now, this other slide is the composition of Hispanics in Texas. You know, nothing new for you here. We already know those that their ancestry with Mexican ancestry is basically the majority, 76%. And then you have the Central Americans, 50%, the South Americans, 7%, and the Cuban and Dominicans with 3%. The thing with this is that if you see this composition 5 years from now, it may change. And this is where the whole idea of the new Tejano. Uh, let me show you here. This pie right here is the composition of the recent Hispanic immigrants.
Wow.
you can see how that basically changes, right? Venezuelans, 20%, Cubans, 25%, Mexico, 26%, Honduras and El Salvador combined, 18%. So if you see this, and if you think about, how this may shift, I think it can. But that really depends on immigration policy, right?
That is this slide is already dated, Jose. Okay, let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Yes, Houston has a large percentage of actually the entire state. This I'm assuming this slide shows that 20% are Venezuelans.
Mhm.
This is the state, or this is Houston.
The state.
Okay, so let's go there. So the TPS, the temporary protection status, has just been revoked by Trump. Okay,
Right. For Venezuela.
what that's what allowed Venezuelans to be in the country temporarily while they were working towards some sort of legal status. Okay, that's been removed. So now every Venezuelan who had a TPS, and again they were here, they had protected status because of the political unrest in their country. Okay, so now that's gone. So that could decimate those numbers, and so we can factor that out. That only time will tell.
Only time will tell, and only babies will tell.
But yeah, Mexico political climate to be able. There's a lot of unknowns.
There's a lot of unknowns. Yes. Yes.
I'm going to continue to talk about your slide. So Mexico, 26%.
Hmm.
That may even decrease even more, Jose, because I wouldn't be surprised if we go through reverse migration. Reverse migration is the Mexicans here in the U.S. In Texas without legal status. They may go back to Mexico because they may decide they've had enough. They've had enough of all the unrest and all the treatment against immigrants to go back to Mexico, and so this could potentially be a voluntary thing. And of course, you're going to continue to have immigration policies that are going to continue to deport Mexicans with illegal status. Cuba, that's interesting. Cuba, 25%.
Yep.
Talk to us.
You're seeing it, right?
A lot of Cubans in Texas. A lot.
Yes.
There's a whole community in Houston that throws festivals around the Caribbean motif, to where you have Central Americans and Cuban flavor in a lot of these festivals. So I find that very interesting. Texas could become a little Havana, like Florida has become.
The next Miami, right?
Yeah.
The- No, we in regards to Cubans, I'm not surprised. I seen it. You hear it. You know, even when you're putting gas, or you're buying something at the grocery store.
Metiquetico.
s- It get Yeah. I mean, it's hard to miss it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if others in our community are able to identify the accent, but for us, I think it's simple. This guy's from Cuba, or this guy's from Puerto Rico, right? So I see it. So again,
Just
not
this week,
surprised.
yeah, just this week, Jose, I went to a Denny's. There was an African American girl that was the waitress, and she talked to me in Spanish.
Yeah.
So that told me you're either Colombian, Cuban, Cuban, or Central American. And I asked her, "¿De dónde eres?" She says, "I'm from Honduras." Okay.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So again, there are certain stereotypes and certain features that automatically you can pinpoint where the person is from.
Yep.
But again, this is where we're at. It's like Houston is a totally melting pot for how the country is going to evolve.
And interesting that you bring the reverse factor here of those that will probably get tired of the whole situation here. um I wonder what's going to happen in 4 years,
That's
If
very interesting. No question about it that it's going to be radically different than where we are today.
it
Uh,
may be that we have a rebound, right?
yeah.
So I yes, is already dated, but I will hold this for the future. As of now, it looks very very real in Houston, in a city such as Houston. But anyways, that's what I have, Victor. In terms of the data that was shared, there is more that we can explore if you like to in the future. But this is I found this very interesting and refreshing as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because I had not seen this data be updated like this before. When I worked at the Houston Chronicle, we had reports on Hispanics that were commissioned by agencies from other states. And again, I even looked at those studies and saw them as very dated or out of touch with the real landscape of Houston because I was in the communities and I saw everything that was going on. And so yeah, this is very refreshing, very interesting. And I look forward to having you back to go into a deeper discussion and to look at the nuance of Latinos in Houston and in Texas because
There's definitely more.
where we are, we need to go where we're going.
Yes, exactly. So again, there's definitely more than this. So yeah, I mean, let's look at this again.
Jose, I want your takeaways. What did you get? What was the biggest impact? What surprised you the most out of this presentation?
I mean, whenever you see a presentation like this, it's very general data, right? That gives you like a very broad perspective of, okay, this is what Latinos look like in Houston. This is what they look like in Austin, in San Antonio. But again, the fact that Houston itself is a massive city, and that I guess you can find the commonalities in a city such as Houston or Dallas, but if you, depending on who you want to talk to in the Hispanic market, you're going to have to adjust the language. Uh, you're going to have to adjust the images that you're using. And you may have to adjust even the channels that you're using to communicate with that community. So, even for if you're selling, for example, financial services for some Latinos that are trying to go into retirement, those are going to be very different channels than the ones that you will be using to target Gen Zs, for example, uh, and even in a city such as Houston. So that my point here is that for those that are wanting to test their products or are entering the market, the Texas market, and they see Houston as the prime destination, they may come with some mindset that is not necessarily the reality in the city. Because if this information is being shown to that executive in Ohio, Wyoming, or wherever they are, and they think this is exactly what it is in a city such as Houston, I will say, look, this is your starting point, right? But there's more to this. That there's more research to be done depending on the product that you're trying to sell.
Yeah, you're talking about being able to launch a multi-million-dollar campaign
Hmm.
and have it not work out because again, they had the wrong messaging, they had the wrong images, and they had the wrong media in order to target this demographic. Or you need to really, really have a broad strategy for targeting the demographic, which now includes all kinds of new media
New media.
that
That
never existed in for mass communication, for mass
ex-
media.
exactly. Things are changing in the industry, so we need to take that into consideration.
And that's where we're at. That's where we're at.
All right. Well, until next time, Victor.
I will look forward to speaking with you next time, Jose. That's it for today, friends. Go out and have a great week.